I mean, that's often what makes people think.
But it can also be just, it's just
you're lying.
Nobody believes this. Because also, again, when you're talking about things, not just legal theories, but like actual events that have occurred and actual evidence. There was a case of an incident in which, you know, I don't want to say Border Patrol, but immigration officials arrested a woman who they drove into. And everybody watched the incident and said, you drove into her, and then they dragged her out of the car and arrested her. And then dropped the charges later. These are the things that are happening.
Abby Phillip absolutely takes Arthur Aidala to task in today's video as the two go head-to-head on Table for Five, where she breaks apart his MAGA-driven talking points and calls out the rising credibility crisis surrounding the Trump administration. She challenges everything from misleading court testimonies to open DOJ overreach, exposing the clear hypocrisy of defending law enforcement misconduct while the justice system strains under political pressure, and the debate heats up quickly as Abby refuses to hold back, pushing for real accountability and shutting down every weak excuse Arthur tries to offer. So let's dive in and see how Abby Phillip puts Arthur Aidala in his place on Table for Five.
There's a lot in the courts happening, and I will say Trump is winning in some cases, but on the question of can the government's word be trusted, that's being called into question many times. And I'm actually flabbergasted by this, because let me play for you what Gregory Bovino, he's the Border Patrol agent that has been sent over to Chicago. This is the exchange where he is asked about the use of force, and particularly his use of force, and here's what he says.
You said on October 30 that from what you have seen, all of the uses of force by yourself and the men under your command have been more than exemplary, your words. You still stand by that?
Yes.
So when you tackled Scott Blackburn, as shown in the video marked for identification as Exhibit 8, that use of force on your part was more than exemplary?
Objective form lacks foundation.
As we talked earlier, that was not a reportable use of force.
Not a use of
placed
force.
him in under arrest. I didn't tackle him. I placed him under arrest.
Gotcha.
The judge looked at that and said, that's a lie. There's a video. You clearly tackled him. I think it is really ballsy, frankly, to go to a court and then straight up lie like that.
Okay, so
what is happening?
You know what I do with my day job, right? When I'm not playing a lawyer on TV.
Yes.
Of course, I couldn't agree with you more. That's what I do all day long. Is I cross-examine law enforcement officers, and I try to say that they're either exaggerating or blowing things out of proportion, and that my client is not guilty. So this is like nothing new. I mean, this is being, you know, look, I bleed blue because I need them to protect us. But law enforcement officers lying in a court of law is not exactly something that's unique and new under Trump. I mean, it's been going on forever and ever and ever.
About something that's on video?
Well, now they're on video.
This is the issue, right?
Look,
like we see
Derek Chauvin went to trial, right? The whole thing was on video, and that's his constitutional right to contradict what we saw on video. So, but I mean, look, Trump's Department of Justice going to trial and someone being found not guilty. Luckily, under my law firm, the last 5 presidents, Department of Justice have gone to trial and they've been found not guilty by lawyers in my office. So that's not so unique. But I will say there have been some arguments by the Trump administration in the Supreme Court of the United States and in other courts of appeals that have strained credulity. Is that the right word?
Yes, it is.
But the flip side of the coin is that often is what makes new law.
Abby Phillip and Arthur Aidala's exchange really exposes how deeply divided people have become over accountability inside law enforcement and the justice system. And Abby makes an important point here, because when a Border Patrol agent like Gregory Bo can openly lie under oath, even with clear video proving otherwise, it destroys public trust in the very institutions meant to uphold the law. What makes this even more troubling is that it's not some isolated event, but part of a larger pattern that grew even more obvious during the Trump administration, where truth often felt optional if it supported political goals. And yes, police misconduct has existed for decades, but the difference now is how normal it has become to defend it, even when the evidence is right in front of us. Reports from the Bureau of Justice Statistics and independent watchdog groups consistently show how rare real discipline is for officers who lie or use excessive force. And that lack of consequences creates a culture where many feel untouchable. While Arthur's "it's been happening forever" excuse is exactly why the problem keeps growing, because something being old doesn't make it acceptable. The Trump-era DOJ pushed that mentality even further by leaning on law enforcement narratives no matter how shaky they were, even when courts pointed out contradictions or outright falsehoods. And Abby's argument isn't about politics at all, but about basic integrity. Because if truth in court stops mattering, then the justice system loses its moral foundation. And honestly, that's far more dangerous than any partisan victory.
I mean, that's often what makes people think.
But it can also be just, it's just
you're lying.
Nobody believes this. Because also, again, when you're talking about things, when you're not just legal theories, but like actual events that have occurred and actual evidence. There was a case of an incident in which, I don't want to say Border Patrol, but immigration officials arrested a woman who they drove into. And everybody watched the incident and said, you drove into her, and then they dragged her out of the car and arrested her. And then dropped the charges later. These are the things that are happening.
And part of this challenge is there are people who feel empowered and emboldened to just make bald-faced lies, and then there's people like this young man who was the security guard at a farm where there were undocumented workers on the farm, and he's like, here's my passport, let me just get it for you, I'm a U.S. citizen. And they didn't care. Just dragged him out, brought him in, put him into custody. He was detained for 2 or 3 days. So those of us who have to now prove that we are legitimately U.S. citizens don't feel that confidence that the American justice system is going to be treating all of us equally.
So on a lighter note, the sandwich guy.
I was going to say.
We got to talk about the sandwich guy because he is free. This was the testimony from the Border Patrol agent. You could smell the onions and mustard, he recalled. He said the sandwich exploded on him. He could feel it through his ballistic vest. And to which a jury said, not guilty. I mean, they tried to charge this guy with a felony. They raided his home, essentially, in this sort of like major operation, only to charge him with throwing a sandwich.
Abby Phillip, Na Hawk, and Arthur Idala's exchange really shows how far the justice system has drifted from basic fairness and common sense. And Abby and Nara are absolutely right to call out the absurdity and danger in situations where officers can lie about running over a woman or detaining a U.S. citizen who literally presents proof of citizenship, because that isn't politics. It's a complete collapse of accountability. These incidents aren't random mistakes, but signs of a system that has been trained to protect authority instead of the people it serves. And Arthur's "these things happen" response completely misses the point. Because while abuses of power have always existed, the rise in cases we're now seeing, many captured on video, shows that emboldened officials act without fear of consequences. Reports from the American Civil Liberties Union and ProPublica have documented repeated due process violations by immigration agencies, often targeting Latino and immigrant communities under the assumption that no one will challenge them, which makes this more than bias, it makes it systemic negligence. And the sandwich assault case Abby and Nara bring up perfectly exposes how government resources can be misused, because charging a man with a felony for throwing a sandwich while millions struggle to eat highlights how skewed the system's priorities have become, showing that it's not about safety, but about control and overreach. Abby and Nara have every right to be outraged, because if the justice system puts more energy into criminalizing sandwiches than addressing inequality, then maybe the real crime is how little justice is actually left.
We're in a twilight zone. This is the same world that we live in, where we don't have enough money. I want to go back to what we've already talked about, to feed the 42 million Americans, but we have enough money to bring somebody to court over a sandwich. Like, this sounds insane to me that this is even a conversation. You look on social media, you see it. Every 5 seconds, you see someone doing something illegal under the name or under a guise of authority, and they feel as if they're empowered to do so.
Well,
You just said
it's
been going on for a long time. I don't know. I agree with you.
When I was in the DA's office, I would dismiss cases because cops did the wrong
Arthur,
thing.
no one's
Totally.
disagreeing. I am saying, look, I come from the world of sports. No one's ever fouled, ever. Like, every guy's like, I didn't do it. That was him. I didn't do it. Yeah, you do it. But, like, I understand. But the world that we live in today, I'm watching in real time, and people are out here doing whatever they want to, taking law into their own hands, because if they feel as if they can, and it starts from the top, they feel as if they
I've
can.
asked this a number of times, but I will continue to ask it because I think every time these videos come out, and it's every single day, and also, you know, the DHS spokesperson keeps making false statements in trying to diminish the effect of these videos. How much longer will they be able to keep this up? Because there is going to be backlash. There already is some backlash to some of this.
Yeah. First of all, with the sandwich incident, I think it's a crime for two reasons. First of all, you shouldn't really be thrown at a cop. But secondly, I'd like to eat one.
Okay,
but secondly, here's the thing.
You know, they said it was thrown at point blank range.
The
dangerous sandwich.
Danger.
Look, I don't think you never should be screwing around with a law enforcement officer, but I understand the tensions of the issue. Whatever. The point I'm trying to make is, with any great sort of change or some big effort being undertaken, there comes a great deal of responsibility. And so I support the men and women of ICE, but they have to hold the mantle of responsibility and hold themselves to a higher level. Because at some point, like you said, there will be negative backlash. There already is. It's also a PR campaign to keep your deportations popular. When I was on the show after Trump got elected, we saw polling in favor of mass deportation. Now that number has flipped. Why? Because of the way things have been carried out. So I think there needs to be changes to the process to ensure that we're doing the right thing by the American people, we're carrying out the will, and we're following the law.
With power comes a lot of responsibility. I think you're totally right about that. And I don't know. I feel like this administration is just sort of flaunting that as if it doesn't matter, but it really does.
This exchange between Carrie Champion, Abby Phillip, and TWW Arrighi makes it clear how power and accountability keep crashing into each other inside America's justice and immigration systems. And Carrie and Abby are absolutely right to point out just how absurd things have become when a person can be dragged into court over a sandwich while 42 million Americans can barely afford food, which shows exactly where the government's priorities really are. TWW can talk about responsibility all he wants, but the reality is that responsibility isn't applied equally, and multiple investigations from ProPublica and even the Department of Homeland Security's own Inspector General have uncovered widespread misconduct inside ICE and Border Patrol, from falsified reports to abusive behavior at the border, proving these aren't random incidents but full-blown systemic failures. W keeps defending these agencies as though a few bad apples are the problem, but the evidence points to a much deeper issue. A culture of impunity that's been allowed to grow unchecked for years. Carrie also makes a strong point about public perception, because the reason opinions on deportations are shifting is that people are now witnessing these abuses in real time, on camera, online, every single day. And Americans are finally realizing that law and order isn't the same thing as justice. And supporting law enforcement doesn't mean turning a blind eye to corruption inside it. Carrie and Abby stand on the right side of this debate, the side that demands transparency, humanity, and real accountability. Because once people in power stop fearing consequences, everyone else ends up paying the price.